Hi, thanks for having us back up. Let's take a closer look at the tide pump and ask some questions. How much power does it generate? Or how big would it have to be to power a house or a city? Or what would it look like? Is it really possible? Would the fabrication costs outweigh the benefit?
Will it really work? We have to step back and look at what we are really doing. We are using the tide to lift an object and are harnessing the energy from that object rising and falling around 20 feet twice a day. The total energy that is possible to harvest is equal to the mass, or buoyancy, of our object, multiplied by the gravitational constant, multiplied by the height it is raised. That is it. It is a simple formula. Potential energy equals m times g times h. This is the total energy possible. The bigger the mass or float, the more potential energy. Consider our small proof of concept prototype. It does not pump a lot of water, about 150 gallons per day. If we pump it up to an elevation of 20 feet, it would not take a very big float to power it, about 10 cubic feet. Say a float 5 feet long by 2 feet wide by 1 foot deep. Small float equals small energy. But without changing anything on the pump, but just extending the pipe to a higher elevation, say 200 feet, it still pumps 150 gallons per day, but now it would take a 100 cubic foot float. Say 10 feet long by 10 feet wide by 1 foot deep. Bigger float equals bigger energy. To pump it to 2,000 feet, you would need a 100 foot by 100 foot float. So what we are doing is transferring a large mass rising a small elevation, tide, to a smaller mass rising a larger elevation. So it is quite possible and feasible to transfer the great amount of energy in large masses with relatively small pumps by pumping the water up to higher elevations. Large bore, high volume pumps are not required. Affordable smaller bore can be used with a combination of input gear reduction and pumping to higher elevations.
How much energy for what size float? A 24 foot by 24 foot by 20 foot float would support a 1 kilowatt power plant, about as much energy required for a home. A cruise ship used as a float could power a small city, or generate about 7,550 kilowatts per day. At energy prices near where we live on Prince of Wales Island, that is $4,900 per year. Typically speaking, pumped hydro storage plants are large volume facilities. The Raccoon Mountain Pump Storage in Tennessee is a 1,652 megawatt plant. The Bath Company Pump Storage Station in Virginia is a 500 megawatt plant. And the Helms Pump Storage Plant in California is a 1,212 megawatt plant. How big of a reservoir is required? It simply depends on the elevation of your reservoir and how much energy you want to store. If you have just-in-time facility, where you're using the water as you pump it, a reservoir that would hold a couple of days of consumption would suffice. In the single house example presented earlier, a 5,000 gallon tank with a 200 meter elevation would work. The real beauty of pumped hydro storage, though, is the ability to store energy indefinitely. It is the only real way we have to store energy. Again, the bigger the reservoir, the more energy you can store.
Interestingly, using seawater instead of freshwater for storage seems to be the latest emerging trend in pumped hydro storage technology. There is a 30 megawatt seawater plant on Okinawa Island, Japan. Seawater plants are in various stages of construction and planning in Glinsk Island, 480 megawatts, and Lanai, Hawaii, 300 megawatts. Pumped hydro storage is being used to store excess energy from all types of power generating plants, not just hydroelectric. Our proposal is the first to use pumped hydro storage to store energy from the tides.